Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. It is my intention for this video to give you the information that I believe that you need to make this the best month possible and learn a little astrology while you're at it. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, where I have a very extensive astrology blog, including blogs on the new and full moons and how best to use those power periods. If you are interested in learning astrology and you resonate with how I teach, check out my astrology apprenticeship program, also at anniehelpsyou.com. Definitely check out my new book, that has become a beautiful bedside companion and purse-toting companion for my fellow spiritual seekers, an Amazon bestseller, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. And you can see that at radicalprayerbook.com. So what do we have in store for you this month? I'm going to go into lots of details. Let's check them out now. Hello Aquarius friends, welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. Jolting drama and wild changes ahead. Complements of the eclipses are very likely. We've got Mercury Retrograde bringing this tie-in from the past, things coming back from the past to manifest in a huge way or to deal with. We've got lots of changes for you in your immediate environment. So like whatever the areas are closest to you, so your area at work, your area at home, your routine. There's some interesting love opportunities, and we've got so much more to discuss. So I'm going to show you the charts that I used for this reading and break it up into the early, middle, and late degree placements so that you could see that visually. And I'll show you where there's emphasis this month for you. In general, there's a lot of energy starting to move into Leo. And as that happens, that is opposing your sign, including that second new moon. So when you've got energy opposing your sign, overstimulation is definitely going to happen. So definitely be prepared to be way overstimulated this month, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, on every level. So I'll show you the ways that that's coming in, plus other areas of your chart that are going to be focused on. So the flow for the rest of this video will be, I'm going to drop the charts in, show you more about what you can expect. Then I have a Mercury retrograde tutorial, and then I have the general transits, including dates to look out for, and the things I think you need to know most about the general transit. So we have a very comprehensive report as usual. So let's get started with the charts. Okay, so many of the things we talk about are going to be true regardless of your Aquarius placement, but there are going to be places where some of the things I talk about are going to be different depending on where in the 30 degrees of Aquarius you were born. So early Aquariuses basically are January born or 0 to 9 degrees. Middle degree Aquariuses around February 1st through 10th or 10 to 19 degrees. And late degree Aquariuses around February 11th or 20 through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees. If you are asking the question to yourself, is this good for me if I'm watching for my rising sign or moon sign? The answer is yes. I always recommend that people watch at least for their sun sign and rising sign. And if you watch for your moon, you will get an additional perspective. They're all like windows. So the moon, the sun, the rising sign are all windows out of the house of the experience that you're having. And there's a different view out of the different windows if you have different placements. So you can get a more comprehensive picture by watching for all of those. Okay, so if you missed that, just go back and use my little chart to figure it out. The first thing I want to talk about, and let's see, I'm going to use the middle degree chart, but what I'm going to talk about is going to be true for all of y'all. All right, so we talked about how the planets are moving into Leo. When planets move into Leo, they create 180-degree angles with your Aquarius placement. So however many Aquarius placements you have, every planet that moves into Leo, these are doing it now, right from the beginning of July. These are coming soon. And, well, this one isn't, but this one is. This one will be fast, so we won't really look at that, and this one will eventually make it. So every planet that moves to the Leo points are going to cause this overstimulation. Overstimulation doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can just be a lot of things happening at once, and usually it has something to do with being pulled in two different directions, like two areas of your life or multiple areas of your life are lighting up in a big way and need attention, and you're being pulled because of that. So I always say, be aware of overstimulation, be well rested is a theme for this month. Now, we have 2 new moons this month, right at the beginning on the 2nd and right at the end. And the second one is going to be at 8 degrees of Leo. So even that, right, even through to the end of the month and beyond, the closer you are to 8 degrees, the more that new moon is going to offer opportunities that personally affect you. So if you're between like 3 and 14 degrees of Aquarius, then the closer you get to 8 degrees, but within that range, that new moon at the end of the month is going to affect you even more. And again, this could be amazing. This could be overstimulating. This could be challenging. This could make you exhausted. But however it is, it's going to affect you more if you're in those dates. And as an Aquarius, it will affect you either way, but just more for them. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is this major focus on the 6th house. And this is for early, middle, and late degree. I'll show you the different charts. But you can see there's a huge crowding for middle degree in the 6th house, including Mercury, which is going retrograde. Not on July 1st, but soon into July, it will start going backwards. Okay, here's our late friends. You can see there. Full 6th house. And early degree placements, full 6th house. Now for all of you, since Mercury is moving back from 4 degrees of Leo to 23 degrees of Cancer, you can see how that's going to fit. See, 8 degrees is there. So that's going to fit within the 6th house for early and for middle. The middle is trying to escape here. Okay, 3 back to 23 degrees. And then even the late. So this is one of those times when a transit is actually going to be accentuating the same house for all of you. It doesn't always work out that way because as you can see, let's just look here. Just as an example, moving from early, middle to late, check out the cluster in your 12th house for early. Still there for the middle. But look, that same cluster is in the 11th house for late degree placements. So we do have to carefully look at this. There are different ways of doing astrology that would account for everything always being in the same place, and that has validity as well. But when you drill down into these details and you follow them, you can see that this also has merit. And especially you late degree people, you know, a lot of times the charts look different for you and the timing of transits are different for you. So in those cases, I do always differentiate. But what we're about to talk about here with the 6th house being very full, especially including Mercury retrograde, is going to be true for all of you. Okay, so what's the best way to use Mercury in retrograde in your 6th house? Okay, so the things I'm about to describe are the things that are more likely to happen and some of the ways that you can use them. All right, so dealing with clutter. The 6th house relates to the area of your life that is closest to you. You know, your daily routine, the places where you are. So just like very close to your circle. So if you're at work most of the day, you know, your work space and your work environment is in the 6th house. If you do something every day, like you go to yoga or you walk, you know, the places where you cover in that time is in the 6th house. If you're home, it's in the 6th house. So everything that's in your environment is going to be re-questioned. And when I drop in the Mercury retrograde tutorial after this part, you'll hear more about general things of what to do and what to understand about Mercury retrograde. But I'm going to give you some other specific tips here. So clearing out your space and rethinking your space, rethinking your environment is a really great idea. Now, making small changes is very well indicated. The inexpensive things that are easy to change. This isn't the best time to do like the major overhaul, make the huge decisions, the huge design projects, things like that, because the energy is more going backwards and you're not necessarily seeing clearly. So if you have to do something big, I Recommend waiting until closer to mid-August. As the Mercury retrograde post-shadow period clears, then you'll have more clarity about the big decisions. And that includes anything eclipse related that comes in this month. And there may be a lot of eclipse things that come in this month. So you may see changes at work. You may see like a person who was in your office space who was gone and now they're back. And this could have to do with something romantic as well for some of you. But things in your immediate environment. Some of you may have this manifest with pets. I would definitely always get symptoms with your pets checked out, but especially now because something could be nagging or coming back in, or something involving a pet having to do with the past or needing attention. The 6th house also has to do with your health. So getting health checkups, getting things like that are important now, but also do note that any blood work or test results that come back in this month may turn out to be false positives or false negatives, or may be shifted in some way. So if you do get blood work in this month, or because you have to, or it just falls that way, then if something weird comes out of it, I would definitely look into it again. And I do if you have a choice and there's nothing that's an emergency, I think you might get some clearer results in as you get more into August. But you do have to follow the flow with these things, and sometimes there's like a journey that you have to go through. But health could be a huge focus for you. So you might see those things come up. Also rethinking your exercise routine or your health regimen, going back to practitioners or things that worked for you in the past tends to work really well. In general, it's not the best time to commit to long-term things, but short-term things like, 3 to 6 months, something like that, those are better because things may change and you want to be able to be poised for those changes. Okay, so some other things that I want to point out that are kind of ongoing themes. Uranus is thrashing through the 3rd house for you middle degree placements. You can see it's not quite set in the 3rd house for many of you late degree placements. And for you early degree placements, oh goodness, there we go. It's very much in the 3rd house, okay? So changes involving for the late degree placements, you're still doing this like unstable money thing. And for some of you middle degree placements, you still might be kind of in the wake of just having had Uranus thrash for a long time through your financial sector. Some people would have experienced that as money that comes out of nowhere and new ideas for making money. Some people will have experienced it as all of their money going away, and some people would just have volatility there. But whatever the reason, the late degree placements are very soon to be getting Uranus out of their money sector, and I know that will be good news. Now, where it is for everybody else and where it's going for you late degree placements is the 3rd house. So this could have to do with your cars, your vehicles, changes having to do with your communication styles, erraticness having to do with siblings or other relatives, or really just like brilliant ideas that are very forward thinking. So definitely pay attention to the information stream, all of you Aquarius placements that you have coming in, because this energy is fleeting. So these ideas that you have, there might be some in there that you can really do something with, but you forget about them so quickly. So I would say when you have Uranus in the 3rd house, write down your brilliant ideas in a notebook or something, because they're fleeting and you might think for sure you'll remember, but you probably won't because of the nature of the energy. It's not very stable. But there could be some really ingenious things that come through you, and that could also relate to bringing in some money. Okay, so those are the things that are most on my mind for you for this month. Now I'm going to drop in the Mercury retrograde tutorial if you want to learn. And even if you don't, I recommend that you listen, because there are a lot of things I'm going to talk about in there that are going to come up for a good bit of you. And if you understand what to do with the energy, it's going to be better. If you're not interested in that, you can just fast forward until you see me back on the screen. And then I will go into the general transits, some certain dates to watch, and the general climate of the month and how you can best use that. Hi, this is going to be a quick tutorial of the energy of Mercury as it relates to the retrograde cycle and the things to keep in mind that are most important to hold in your consciousness as we go through this phase. So the first thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde or in its shadow, pre or post shadow period for about half of the year. So half of our lives we are in this. That's why it's really important to understand it. The second thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde for 3-ish weeks at a time, and there's about a 2-ish week before and after shadow transit. So the pre-transit shadow period and the post-shadow transit period. So all in all, it's about a 7-ish week process. So it is kind of long at a time. And the implications of Mercury retrograde are very strongly seen in this pre-shadow period, and especially in the first part of this post-shadow period, and then they tend to like linger and just sort of wear off towards the end of that post-shadow period. Mercury rules communication and mobility. So anything involving speaking, writing, communicating, publishing, your devices that you use for communicating, your phones, computers, things like that, your cars, vehicles, walking, your mobility, your capacity to be mobile, your legs, the things that make you able to be mobile. If someone's in a wheelchair, their wheelchair would be there, or whatever it is that is related to your personal mobility. One thing to note as I describe the rest of this is that for people who are born with Mercury retrograde at birth, sometimes they feel the opposite effects of what everybody else feels during a Mercury retrograde period, and that things can flow even better for them during a Mercury retrograde period than when Mercury is direct. So if you have come to notice that, it may be because you have Mercury retrograde at birth. And it also may mean that you have, even if you don't officially have Mercury retrograde, and this is definitely a way more technical thing for you to have to try to figure out, but if Mercury was in a pre or post shadow period close to the retrograde, you could experience having Mercury retrograde from the birth perspective, even though it wouldn't as readily show up on your chart. So that's an important thing to note as well. Okay, so what tends to happen when Mercury's in retrograde is that there are changes to plans. There is uncertainty or confusion about what direction to take. There are plans that were made that are called into question. They may turn out to work out, but they get called into question. Things get called into question. Relationships get called into question. The use of devices and transportation gets called into question. Plans get called into question. And then sometimes they'll work out and sometimes they won't. But this calling into question is a typical Mercury retrograde thing. The topics of travel will often come up, and this can be a fine time for travel. There is a misconception that you shouldn't travel during Mercury retrograde. That's not true. You just have to be more aware because plans tend to change. Gates tend to change at the last minute. Issues with a car tend to come up if you're on a road trip, if you haven't, gotten everything checked out first or whatever, or even sometimes if you did. Impediments to travel, changes. When you're making agreements, Mercury also rules agreements. So if you're agreeing to something, the odds are that you're going to change what you're agreeing to. So it doesn't lend itself as well for long-term or rigid agreements. There are exceptions. If you're in there, don't worry. There are exceptions. But if you are negotiating during Mercury retrograde, you're either not seeing the whole picture, someone is purposely or inadvertently hiding something from you, or there are things that are coming that you're not aware of that are going to change how you can interact in the agreement that you've made. So in general, it is a good idea to be flexible. Flexible, temporary bridge agreements are like the theme that I like to put out there to best use this energy. Let's say you have to negotiate something or you're agreeing to something, and if it's minor or low stakes, you don't have to worry as much. It's the big things, you know, that are more important. But there could be some minor things where it would be helpful to know this. Okay, so keep your flexibility. Try to make a interim or bridge agreement. So like, for instance, let's say you're trying to get a tenant in a house or in a professional space, and you know Mercury's in retrograde. Something like a month to month, totally awesome to embark on in a Mercury retrograde because you can get out of it. Something like a 3-month lease or even 3 to 6 months, something short term. You can make something for a month and then renegotiate when the planets are more clear, you know, the energy is more clear. So those are ways that I like to deal with the Mercury retrograde. And it's definitely a good time to be aware that you might have things happen to your cars and phones and stuff. In general, I don't love this time as the best time to get a new device or car unless you can help it, or unless it's a short-term or interim device. Like, let's say you get a temporary phone to bridge you over something, that's more appropriate. Or you get a car that you plan to have for 3 to 6 months, or, you know, something like that. But for things that you're hoping to keep long-term, the retrogrades tend to make it shorter term. And that's typical. Another place to be careful is launches. Big, awesome, life-changing, once-in-a-lifetime launches are not the ones you want to have when Mercury is in retro. However, let's say you're a teacher and you teach classes twice a year, and Mercury retrograde, you know, is the time for your re-enrollment. Re-enrollment is much better supported. But do also expect that when you have launches in a Mercury retrograde cycle, that more people are going to be wishy-washy, and there's more of a chance for people that have joined that are going to leave the class. So, you know, it's not always a reliable time frame for trying to get people to commit to things, depending on what the nature of it is. It's hard. Commitments get a little bit more difficult. So basically the things to remember for Mercury retrograde is the flexibility, be extra careful, check your plans, your travel plans and other things and documents and agreements extra carefully. And then anything that has the prefix re, pretty much, there's going to be exceptions to this, but rejuvenation, redoing, re-editing, rethinking, reconsidering, even rest. It's a good time to rest. Anything like that where you're like going back over something is better indicated than something brand new, if possible, unless the new thing is short term or a bridge or something you consider doing, like, oh, I've always wanted to try that. Maybe I'll take that class, and the class is, 6 months or whatever. That can be fine. What we really need to have caution with is the bigger things and the things that are higher stakes, etc. Mercury retrograde can be an amazing time. You can get lots of this stuff done, inspiration from the past, tying up loose ends from the past, and preparing for a nice fertile ground for future wonderful things. I'm calling the theme of July 2019 for all signs, 3 times the manifestation power, bold new directions, and time to be brave. It's always interesting when we have a transit like Mercury retrograde that brings this eye to the past, coinciding with so much potential for new energy. So we've got 2 intense eclipses this month, plus 2 new moons this month. Whenever we have a month with 2 new moons, it opens up more potentials for brilliant new paths, and the same thing with the eclipses. But this is happening all under the cover of this Mercury retrograde. So that means that themes from the past, things worked on in the past, contacts from the past, plans from the past, are all going to factor in very heavily to the new opportunities that come. So we talked at length about Mercury retrograde and where that hit in your chart or will hit in your chart, and also what the implications are there. So we're going to go into some additional things to know about this month. The eclipses obviously are bringing massive changes. The transits this month are pretty equal as far as sweet or challenging, and a lot of them could just really go either way. So when we have a situation where there's a transit that's occurring and someone can either manifest something positive or something challenging from it, it really makes it more important for us to watch how we're looking at things. The perspective that we have on life, the perspective that we have on everything, colors, changes, effects, how we experience things. So the more you can be well rested and positive can help you to frame the energies that come in. And the more present you can be emotionally is also going to flavor this month, because with the eclipses and with the Cancer energies and even with the retrograde energies, there's a massive amount of emotion this month, high emotional tides this month, for better and worse. So amazing culminations, things that you've been hoping for forever, can just come to you at this time. I always think about the eclipse time as the vision of the spider with the web. You've spent all this time until July weaving this beautiful web. And sometimes those webs can get really big. I think about the webs I've seen like in the rainforest in Costa Rica, like, taller than a person, these gigantic webs. And of course the spiders that go along with them are pretty big too. But in any case, this web that you've created, now the eclipse time and the retrograde time are both times to just sit back and see what food comes to you. It's not the best time for initiating something huge, although sometimes chance or other things force it to happen that way. But the more you can be flexible, be relaxed, be well rested, not be super intent on pushing an agenda, being flexible, the more you can observe what is coming to you so that you can strike or take in according to what feels the best with the options that come to you. It's a fine time for research, but it's not the best time necessarily to try to push something to happen. It's more of an acceptance of what's coming in and what you're going to do with it. A lot of the eclipse news and changes may have already taken place before the actual eclipses, which occur this month. So you may already be steeped in, rolling around in, coping with, for better and worse, the eclipse changes. So the Cancer energy is bringing in a lot of emotion, a lot of tilt towards the energy of home, family, housing, home projects, things involving childhood psychology, upbringing, having to take some steps backwards in order to be able to take future steps forward. But there's also a coinciding energy of Leo. And Leo is going to give us the audacity to do something with the opportunities that come to us. Also a zest and a passion and creative expression. So in general, new moons and full moons have power for positive changes and things coming to a head, things coming out into the open, things coming to manifestation. When we have eclipses on an eclipse on a new moon or a full moon, it gives us 3 times the manifestation power. So 3 times the new beginnings, 3 times the drama or culmination, or things coming to a head. So it's just definitely a powerful month, very, very, very intense. Intensity is another keynote of this time. As we talked about in the June horoscopes, and definitely if you haven't watched my June horoscopes, You want to do that because I cover the eclipses in detail. There's so much to talk about for this time period. I couldn't fit it all in 1 month. So in June, I go into detail and tell you exactly where the eclipses will hit for you and what manifestations you can see. So definitely rewatch that here in July, even if you watch them in June, so that you can be better poised for understanding the changes that are coming. But in general, the eclipse cycle of Cancer and Capricorn bring in lots of changes to home and family and work and your place out in the world, things with mother and father, and your maternal and paternal energies. Look back to 2009 to 2011 and 2000 to 2001. Those are the times when we experienced this Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycles in the past. So you might see patterns. And I have gotten this question. If those have been your worst times, don't worry. That's not necessarily going to happen again. It's the themes that are brought up that are common to have a continuum. So the areas of life that were a focus, those will likely be a focus at this time. And it doesn't have to manifest the same way that it did. Okay, so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights here as certain dates to note that are my favorite or my most you have to watch out for. If you want a complete list of the aspects that are occurring and what's involved with those aspects, what planets and signs are at play, and what you can expect from those, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com. You'll also get my 28-day virtual coaching program called Shine for free when you sign up for my free email newsletter. Plus, you'll get a written detailed email newsletter a month before, just like I do the horoscopes a month before, of the dates and the aspects and what to look out for, so you have them for your planning purpose and you get those a month early. So you can see that at anniehelpsyou.com. But we'll hit some highlights here. The new moons are going to be, well, first the new moon and the solar eclipse, 10 degrees of Cancer, is on July 2nd. So that is a time of major intensity. I do have blogs on my website for how to make the most of each new moon and each full moon in the different signs. So definitely check those out. Mercury is going to go retrograde at 4 degrees of Leo and back to 23 degrees of Cancer. We talked about this at length, but that's occurring on July 7th, and that pretty much goes until July 31st or August 1st, depending on your time zone. The whole month is covered in Mercury retrograde. We've got some challenges to look out for as far as squares and oppositions throughout the month, and you can see the details of that in my newsletter. But one of the things that I most want you to be aware of is the full moon eclipse on July 16th. That is a lunar eclipse, 24 degrees of Capricorn, lots of intensity around that time, things coming to culmination. Be extra careful and also look out for extra rewards and things that you've worked on from the past that can come in a big way. I always try to keep that period of time a little bit light if possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but just be extra careful around that time. What they say about the full moons with, crazy things happening is really true. Whenever you watch these mystical shows or like Merlin or whatever, it's always a full moon when these, crazy things go on. So just take note of that and be prepared to deal with whatever comes. The second full moon, or rather the second new moon, is at 8 degrees of Leo, and that's on July 31st or, thereabouts, depending on your time zone. So the second new moon in the calendar month is a black moon, and there's extra power at this time for wishes and new beginnings. So plenty of opportunities for new beginnings. This month is just chock full of them. Throughout the month, we have some challenges with Uranus, we have challenges with Pluto, we have challenges, Pluto, Uranus, kind of a theme there, Saturn. So some of the outer planets are in challenging configurations, and this can bring tests, but it doesn't have to be a be-all, end-all. Often it can bring overstimulation, and that could be a major theme of this month. We could get through this month and have complete positive outcomes and no negativity at all. Certain people will have that experience. Other people will have massive drama and lots of challenges, but there's no one way it has to go. It's wide open here. But understanding the element of the opposition is important because oppositions are pulling us in two different directions. So be prepared to be pulled in two different directions, and also be prepared to be overstimulated. This is going to be an incredibly busy month physically, like moving around, doing stuff. Emotionally, it will be busy. You will be handling things. You might be holding space for other people who are dealing with changes. During eclipse cycles, we'll often see people around us going through massive change, and sometimes we are too. So it's hard to tell at this point if you're going to be a space holder for other people as they go through these big changes, or if you're going to be one of the people going through the big changes, or both. Sometimes in eclipse time, we're going through these big changes and we're also holding space for other people doing that. So be prepared to be overstimulated emotionally and mentally. That's why this theme of just trying to be well rested is really important, because we know that you can't really handle things as well when you're tired. So the more you can be not tired and take your supplements and, do whatever you need to for support, do your walks, do your exercise, you're going to much better be able to use the energies that are present at this time. And there are a lot of sweet aspects in between these challenging ones. So there are some nuisances, but there are lots of sweet things too. Okay, so definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. I have an extensive astrology blog plus other blogs that you can check out there on different topics. If you resonate with how I teach and would love to learn, my astrology apprenticeship program is open for enrollment, and I will teach you everything you need to know to do astrology professionally, or if you just want it for your self-development process, it's amazing for that as well. You can check out all the other kinds of goodies I have on my site, including subliminal recordings that I create for you to help and train your brain to the positive changes that you're trying to make. And you can also see my other professional development courses there. Definitely check out my book, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. As I mentioned before, it has become a purse friend. It has become a car friend, a bedtime companion. It's just an amazing book for the spiritual seeker to really help you to use the power of word and prayer and intention to manifest the positive changes you want to see in your life. Check out my husband's website, IamHelios.com. He has amazing options now for you to use audio, subliminal, power-packed, frequency-enhanced recordings to mitigate the negative energies of transits and to enhance the positive energies of astrological transits. So we've worked together in the way of trying to figure out what resources would be best for you based on the things I see in the charts. So you can see the options for audios that can help you to maximize the transit. So you can check that out at IamHelios.com. Also, you can book a live reading at my site, AnnieHelpsYou.com, either with me or my amazing apprentice, Marilee. And you can also book sessions with my husband, B.R. Newman, at IamHelios.com. Okay, so those are the things I most have in mind for you this month. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.